Good morning, everyone, and Tarmo, many thanks for the kind words. I will try to live up to the expectations that you set there in the introduction. There is one thing that I didn't put there on the first slide that I should mention. I'm also a member of the Data Spaces Business Committee of the GAIA-X Foundation in Brussels. That consists primarily of people from the industry working on the GAIA-X and really focusing on that, what is the value proposition and the business value of the GAIA-X activities as such. So happy to talk about that topic as well. The reason why within the Taltech Industrial project we decided to focus on GAIA-X, there are multiple reasons for that, but I would say that the key reasons are that when you consider Estonia, it has an excellence in software and really good experience in having different data sharing projects and really initiatives taking place, and starting from Estonia and then expanding like X-Road to Finland as well. And here in Finland, the manufacturing industry and the industrial side has been the kind of the driving force for the change in starting using data in various ways and really trying to see that what is the value of data. So in my presentation, I will kind of start from that point of view so that we have good cooperation between Estonia and Finland in place, and what are the different things that we should do together to really influence and impact on the GAIA-X developments in Europe. And that's why I say that it's a key enabler for really making things real, really taking or creating value out of the data and really helping the future industrial competitiveness of Europe go forward as such. One additional thing also to mention there is that we should not consider GAIA-X in isolation. So whenever there is a buzzword like AI or IoT earlier on, or now GAIA-X, people tend to focus on that one thing. And to me, that's something that we should really try to avoid. We should really try to understand that the manufacturing industry particularly looks into GAIA-X, 5G, IoT technologies, AI, machine learning, you have it, from the context and the point of view that how those technologies together can really influence and impact the way they run their businesses. And I think that's important to understand, that from the business point of view, you really focus on the technologies as a group instead of looking into one technology at the time. So my interest working with the industry stems from 1990s when I was doing my PhD in California, and I started working with the Silicon Valley companies in the mid 1990s and ended up working for Nokia for 12 years. And from there, went back to academia and now work as an advisor together with my academic position. So I currently advise, for instance, Combient, which is the Nordic industrial network of 32 largest companies in Sweden and in Finland. And GAIA-X is one of those areas that we are really focusing and really trying to understand that what will be the meaning of GAIA-X for the industrial companies as such. Can I have the next slide, please? So why GAIA-X? I think it's the most important question. And the reason being that in 2011, or a little bit earlier than that already, there was a team that was well known and started to become a kind of a more well known from stemming from the European developments, which was Industry 4.0. And at that time, we were really starting to understand that how the new technologies that you will have in the manufacturing facilities can optimize the current production, how they can optimize the supply chains, and how you really can kind of get the most out of the technologies in the manufacturing facility as such. Fairly soon afterwards, we started to understand that it doesn't really matter if you only focus on the current business and in the way how you optimize your core businesses at the time. Obviously, it brings revenue. It adds in the incremental innovation of those companies. But if you really want to do radical things, if you really want to disrupt the way how you're currently conducting your business, then you really have to focus on data and the different data flows that you will have in your manufacturing facilities and in the supply chain and the whole life cycle of the products that you are actually producing. And that led very quickly to the knowledge or kind of a revelation that it doesn't matter what data the individual companies have, but it matters that what type of data all the companies in the value chain actually have. And having access to that data and really being able to create that data and share that in a manner that it would make sense for a group of companies or a growing network of companies is the starting point for GAIA-X. Because fairly quickly we started to understand that you can do kind of individual agreements or bilateral agreements between the companies. How do they share data? But if you want to go beyond that, if you really want to have a sectoral impact, if you really want to have a national economic impact, you have to have grounding principles that allow for a widespread utilization of industrial data and sharing that industrial data. And you would have a common understanding that what can be done with the data. And data alone, as I said, is not the kind of the salvage point in the sense that it really transforms everything. It's actually people. And people, it basically means that with GAIA-X, we have been able to translate what it is that we can do with data to the key decision makers, be there in the private sector or in the public sector, to make them aware that what are the different solutions that you can actually do with the data, where you can add it, where you can actually build data-driven new businesses. And I have an example in my presentation in that manner, what it is that we have been doing with the German automotive industry called Catena-X. So I will have later on slides on that. But the GAIA-X project, as it says there on the slide, is really about how you become better skilled and capable of using the data for various purposes, and how you become more self-determined in a way of doing that. And it's important to notice that for the industry, technology sovereignty or data sovereignty means exactly that you don't only have access to the data and you're able to use the data, but you really have to have a way to master the data that belongs to you and also master the data that belongs to the value chain and the different industrial sectors. And that's the key. So we are very happy to use any American or Asian technologies as a basis for our systems, and we will continue to do so. But at the same time, the way that how we are handing out the data, for instance, to the cloud servers is going to change, because we will need to have an access to that data and be able to control the data that goes into the clouds. So that's important to mention, because at some point people were asking me that are we going to create from GAIA-X a competitive cloud business to AWS or Azure and those, and we're not. We're really focusing on the way how the data is being managed and handled as such. Next one, please. So the right-hand side of this slide, I think it's most important to understand, and you can, sorry about the small text there, but the blue text there on the right-hand side, it really kind of summarizes that what GAIA-X is about. And I already said that it's about a kind of an evolution from Industry 4.0 to the data-driven Industry 4.0 that can be titled GAIA-X. So we're looking for cross-border cooperation, different member states working together, industries within those member states, companies within those member states working together on the initiative. And it's not a Brussels-driven initiative. It stems from the industry, it's business-driven, and it stems from the member states and the national interests of those member states, instead of being a Brussels-directed directive of something that I think it's legal or regulatory aspect of that kind. So this is very important to understand also. It is not a European policy program as such. Transparency, obviously I said that when you're sharing data and we're really building new business on the top of that data and using it for various purposes, you have to be absolutely transparent. We're talking about IPRs, we're talking about the industrial agreements you need to have in place, who owns the data, who controls the data. You can do it in a temporary fashion. You don't have to give the rights to your data for ad infinitum, but you can really control the timing of using of that data as well. And obviously you have to do it in a trusted manner. And that's why the Central European companies are very eagerly looking to Estonia and Finland for the experience that we have in cybersecurity and sharing data and using data in a secure manner. And that's one of the key areas where we can really have a big impact. I would say even an outsized impact when you consider the companies that we have in Estonia and Finland to the GAIA-X development as such. Can I have the next one, please? Here is a picture from the GAIA-X that you can see there in the middle. There actually is an X, so the mark there or the letter there. So like X road, it has a picture where you have the letter X, and what it basically means is that it integrates into a single development or a single initiative all these different aspects that I was already referring to, like data sovereignty. It will lead to reduction on dependencies. It will really give more control, and it will really increase the awareness of that what it is that you can do with the data and why it matters for the industrial companies to really start understanding that what type of a role data plays in their businesses. And I have a couple of examples of that I think it's important to mention. The first thing is that at some point when companies were looking into data analytics and they were looking into how data science and data engineering can help their business, they set up their individual organizations to look into that, what type of data there actually exists within the companies. And lo and behold, I would say that the majority of those companies understood that actually big data does not matter. The type of data that they had, even if that you had huge volumes of data, actually out of that huge volumes, you only had data that was good for new business opportunities that was very small amount out of that big data. So it was the quality of the data, it was the way how the data can be created, and it was also that what would matter for the business itself. You can't just say that you are a data-driven business. You have to really work from the business point of view, the industrial logic point of view, instead of just kind of adding or taping data on top of everything. So that doesn't really function as such. So in order for the companies to really go forward with the GAIA-X development, we need digital infrastructures. We need common understanding what type of technologies we need there to have in place in order to really build something on top of that. And that is one of the cornerstones of GAIA-X as well. We are creating a technology architecture where companies together are building the infrastructure layer and really giving the foundation for GAIA-X from the technology point of view. And in that technology architectural work, we have American companies working with us, including Microsoft. We have companies like Palantir, for instance, working in GAIA-X as well. So we have the best knowledge, I would say, and also the understanding that how do you make a service 24/7. So basically really making it robust and industry grade so that we can build manufacturing services, we can build different other type of business opportunities on the top of that. At some point, there was a big craze about getting startups engaged with the large companies and really working to bring the startup ideas into the industrial scene. And that worked to an extent, and it still functions. It works in a way that you can kind of introduce big ideas and novel ideas into the manufacturing processes and the manufacturing business. But at the same time, in many cases, the startups were not robust enough or sustainable enough for the manufacturing processes. So basically, the startups engagement was very much about what are the new ideas that the industry can do, and then industry together with the startups started really building the basis for the business. You can't really just outsource everything from startups or from the outside of your business. You need to have this kind of an internal capability and understanding and the logic of the business that you're really doing. So I don't really believe in that the disruption, like in many other businesses in manufacturing, can come from the outside. It really needs to start and continue from the inside of the business as such. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is just a summary slide that we have now over 300 companies working with us. Large companies like the German automotive giants, all the way down to startups that I just mentioned, and all of them coming together in a single goal and understanding that GAIA-X gives them a forum to exchange the ideas, to really work on common practices and best kind of understanding that what it is that you can do with the data. So it's very much about de facto standardization. So instead of working through the long processes that I'm very familiar from my telecommunications background, that you'll in 5G, for instance, or the Gs before that it takes ages and it takes years to end up in the outcome. In this case, we're actually working on use cases where we end up with the best practices that how in specific businesses and in specific sectors you can do things with data. And then those best practices are scaled in the GAIA-X network. And we're not only talking about GAIA-X Foundation itself, which resides in Brussels, but we're really talking about the GAIA-X Hub network. And the GAIA-X Hub network is something that is important to understand, that GAIA-X Foundation is a club. You have to be a member to really have influence in there. But if you belong into the GAIA-X Hub network, you don't have to be a member of the GAIA-X Foundation and you can still play a role. So the GAIA-X Hub networks exists in most of the member states, and the hubs allow the companies that are not members of the GAIA-X Foundation to become part of the activity, to really contribute to become part of the different use cases from the national point of view, to really focus on those areas where you will think that your innovation and your ideas can play a role. So you don't have to become a member of GAIA-X as such if you don't want. Can I have the next slide, please? And I was asked by Tarmo and Marek that please give us an example that what it is that we are currently doing and how we kind of taking GAIA-X in practice. And what I can tell you is that when you go to the GAIA-X website, you can actually find different use cases there. You can have documents on the technology architecture, but at the same time, really focus on the lighthouse projects that are mentioned in there. And the most advanced, and this is my personal opinion, out of those lighthouses is something called Catena-X. And it is the coming together of the German primarily automotive companies, ranging from Daimler to BMW to Volkswagen and the others. So all of those big boys coming together and really starting to work on a single operating system for the automotive industry that utilizes GAIA-X principles, and it uses the technology architecture of the International Data Spaces Association. So it really brings to practice Industry 4.0 logic added with the GAIA-X principles for data management and data governance. That's the big goal. And when those large enterprises and large manufacturing industries, in the automotive industry, the large manufacturing parties and companies come together, it has not been an easy exercise. I would say that when you try to get competing companies in any type of an innovation ecosystem to come together, you have to be extremely careful how that is being managed. What are the expectations that you set forward? What are the funding opportunities that you can really need for that type of a process to go forward? Luckily, the German government understands it, and it has created out of its RRF, the Resilience and Recovery Funds, a earmarked part for GAIA-X activities. So, and it's not uncommon, because when you look into the automotive industry in Germany, it is vital for the German economy. I would say that at some point, every 7th of the jobs in Germany were linked to the automotive industry. So you had a national importance and understanding that you have to work together in order to maintain those jobs in Germany, to really be able to create new industrial competitiveness that enhances and improves the current automotive industry competitive advantage. And data is one of those key control points for that. The other thing is that COVID-19 has actually worked for our benefit. When you think that what happened with the supply chains and the access to semiconductors, for instance, it has currently led into a situation where the GAIA-X, GAIA-X member manufacturing companies are working together to become better in the supply chain risks, to assess those risks and predict those in beforehand, and really work on something that where you need to have the storages, what type of supply chains networks you really need to have in place, what are the location points for the various core components that you need for your cars, for instance. And earlier, I think late last week, actually, and early this week, the Taiwan semiconductor company mentioned that it will be building a facility in Germany to start manufacturing semiconductors. And the main customer for those semiconductors is the automotive industry of Europe. So there are these kind of things that have actually helped us to widen the impact, notwithstanding of GAIA-X itself, like I mentioned, COVID-19, that have helped us to increase the awareness that you can use the type of projects like the GAIA-X, GAIA-X to really improve and enhance the situation, to become better to that type of an external threats like COVID-19 that was unforeseen as such. And what is that we are really creating there are those industry standards that I mean and mentioned as best practices. So we don't have to wait until the end of the project to really see that what are the outcomes. During the project, we are already creating use cases within the automotive industry and really taking those use cases into practice. So in different parts of the value chain where it really matters to use data and what type of data you need in there and how that data can be managed so that the benefits spread around to all the different companies working on the single project. Can I have the next slide, please? Very small picture, but I'll try to see it myself. But basically what it means is that you really have a data-driven value chain. I'm currently working with other industries as well and other sectors where we are introducing the idea that you really extend the use of data throughout the value chain, from the planning phases all the way to the end when the product actually ends with the end user of that product, and how the role of data and the data flows throughout the value chain can be best arranged for that purpose. In many cases, the manufacturing industries did not, for instance, have information about the end user that is actually using the product. And there is one very good example where that type of information given to the manufacturer was able to start a new business altogether. So I take you lawnmower as an example. I'm not talking about car because I would like to kind of extend it to different things. So Husqvarna is one of the largest lawnmowers throughout the world globally. And basically what it is that they were doing is that they were manufacturing the lawnmower, and then they were sending out to the resellers, and the resellers were selling their lawnmowers further. And Husqvarna didn't have any information about whatsoever about the end users that are actually using the lawnmowers. So it was changed through a joint project where actually they started to getting more data from the resellers and from the end users directly to really understand how it would play the role in designing and planning the lawnmowers at the starting phase of the value chain. And that led to a new business where they actually were starting leasing the lawnmowers instead of selling just the physical products to the end users. And very concrete example that how you can do it in a single company and in a single value chain. And in this GAIA-X value chain, it is exactly what we are trying to do. So we are trying to assess that where the data and the using of data makes the most sense, what type of things you can do in a short time frame, what are the things that you need to kind of prepare for a longer project to really understand that how in the long term it will create digital twins of the production and really influence the way how your manufacturing processes are being built. And in all of those areas that you see there in the picture, so starting from the suppliers, I mentioned already COVID-19 and really understanding that what you need to do differently to understand that you really get those parts that you most need at the right time. So you need data for that. You need predictive maintenance. You need predictive analysis of that what is being needed and at what time. Then if you go to the marketplace, you can have a common marketplace for the data, and you need third parties, smaller companies working together with you to really create those type of data-driven or data-enabled solutions that will help the value chain to become more robust and more stable as such. And importantly enough, we should not, I said in the beginning that we should not forget people. And that is one of the most important things here as well. We're still talking about jobs. We're still talking about the manufacturing future of those companies. Not everything can be automated. Not everything can be done by machines or robots. So the human factor is still in there, and it's really must be both in the manufacturing plants or it is in the various other parts of the value chain. If you compare Tesla to the German cars, one of the key comparison points is the quality of the product. I'm not kind of saying that Tesla is a bad car, but when you look into the quality of the product that comes out from the manufacturing, it is very, very different to the German manufacturing companies. I can tell you that. And that was a bit provocative, and happy to discuss that at some point towards the end of the questions and answers as well. But basically, the whole picture is that when you really think that where we are trying to use the data in various parts, you can use the digital twins, you can use the kind of a digital twin train throughout the value chain and find out the gaps where it makes most sense and where it's most valuable and beneficial to use the data. Or then you can focus on certain areas of the value chain first and start building new business really in various parts of that, like the risk assessment. Can I have the next one, please? So as a conclusion, so that we have time for discussion as well, there are two things that I would like to really kind of stress out. So the number one is that we are great at manufacturing in Europe. I already mentioned about the quality of the products that come out from the manufacturing. We are great at optimizing the different industrial processes. You don't have to look that there are any comparisons to the European excellence in that. The Americans, the Chinese cannot match the manufacturing excellence of Europe at this point. And basically, in order to keep up that type of an excellence in manufacturing, it means that we have to start understanding and start using the data to enforce that development. to really keep up with the competition, to really be able to become even better in the manufacturing excellence that we are currently doing. The second one is that when I started in the presentation, I said it doesn't matter if you only focus on data or if you focus on artificial intelligence. You have to focus on the groupings of those new technologies and how those new technologies can be employed and deployed within the industries and within the companies. And there are different levels of maturity and skills. Not all the companies are in the same line or a kind of a starting point. So that maturity of those companies to really be able to deploy those technologies have to be understood as well. There is no kind of a universal recipe for all the manufacturing companies. You really have to apply that by case. That's something that I learned throughout my years advising the companies and working very close with the companies and seeing that where the key challenges are. And when the European Union is very keen on talking about SMEs in the supply chains, and the SMEs are even less homogeneous. They are even more independent. They are even more individual. They are even more different from each other than the large companies as such. So a lot of complexities, a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities as well. So my character is I'm a perennial optimist, and I do see that GAIA-X and everything that we are now really creating gives us the edge that we need for the future. Thank you very much.